The universe turned its back on them, but humans welcomed them. HFY. Their cities floated above the land, held aloft by technology that seemed almost magical. Life on Eloria was peaceful, and the Elorians had grown proud of their achievements. They were thinkers, explorers, and inventors, always seeking to understand the mysteries of the stars. But the universe had other plans. It began quietly. Small tremors shook the surface, and the suns began to flicker unpredictably. Scientists warned that their planet's core was becoming unstable, but neighboring civilizations ignored their messages. The Elorians sent countless distress signals into the void, hoping for help, for guidance, for a solution. Weeks turned into months, and every call went unanswered. It was as if the universe had simply turned its back on them. Among the Elorians, fear spread faster than the tremors. Families clung to each other in the cities, watching the sky as strange storms raged above. Crops failed, and water sources began to disappear. The once proud streets of the cities, normally alive with laughter and conversation, grew quiet. No one dared speak too loudly, as though words themselves might invite the end closer. In the midst of this growing despair, Lyra, a young scientist, worked tirelessly in her lab. Her long, silver hair fell over her shoulders as she studied the readings from the planet's core. She was determined to find a solution, but every test she ran, every calculation she completed, only confirmed what they already feared. Their world was dying, and there was no time to wait for miracles. Lyra's colleague, Kale, a seasoned pilot who had spent his life exploring nearby star systems, watched her with concern. He had always been brave, facing storms and meteors without hesitation, but even he could feel the weight of hopelessness pressing down. He had flown countless missions, had seen countless worlds, but nothing could prepare him for the sight of his own planet falling apart. "We have to leave," Kale said one evening, his voice tight with worry. "If we stay, none of us will survive." The universe was vast, yet cruelly indifferent. The Council of Elders met to discuss the situation. Their leaders, wise and experienced, debated every option. Some suggested hiding beneath the surface of the planet, creating underground shelters. Others argued that they should send a small delegation to plead for help one last time. But the truth was unavoidable. No one answered their calls. No one cared. The universe, it seemed, had abandoned them. As the days passed, Lyra and Kale worked with others to prepare for what they all knew was inevitable. They converted ships meant for exploration into vessels capable of carrying as many people as possible. Engineers, builders, and volunteers worked day and night, sometimes without rest, repairing engines and strengthening shields. Children watched with wide eyes as adults carried tools and supplies, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it. Despite the fear, there were moments of beauty, moments that reminded them why life was worth saving. Families sang songs as they worked, sharing memories of the rivers and forests that were slipping away. Friends laughed quietly when a young Elorian accidentally spilled a container of glowing liquid, which sparked and shimmered in the air before settling harmlessly on the floor. Lyra sometimes paused to watch these small moments, feeling a warmth in her chest that reminded her of hope. But hope alone could not stop the planet from shaking. One night, as the three suns dipped below the horizon, a massive tremor split the land. Buildings swayed, and the sky lit with unnatural flashes. People screamed, rushing to safety wherever they could find it. Lyra grabbed Kale's arm, steadying herself as the ground beneath them heaved. Outside, the rivers boiled and frothed, and the forest swayed dangerously as roots tore from the soil. It was a reminder that time was running out. When the tremor ended, the silence that followed was almost worse than the chaos. The Elorians gathered in the streets, many of them injured, some of them crying. Lyra looked around at the faces of her friends and family, and she felt a heavy determination settle in her heart. They could not give up. If the universe had abandoned them, they would have to save themselves. They would have to leave their home, not out of choice, but out of necessity. Kale approached her, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a rare seriousness. "We have to be ready," he said. "We can't wait any longer. Tonight we begin preparations to leave. Every ship, every resource, every life we can carry, we take it. Eloria may be gone soon, but we can survive. We must survive." Each hum of the engines, each beep of a console, each spark from a welding tool was a reminder that they were still alive, still fighting. Over the next few days, the Elorians worked tirelessly. They rationed food and water, prepared medical supplies, and trained those who had never flown ships before. The older generation shared their knowledge with the young, teaching them the skills they would need to survive the journey into the unknown. Lyra spent long hours at the navigation console, plotting courses through dangerous star systems, calculating every variable, every potential obstacle. Despite the grim reality, small acts of kindness and courage flourished. A group of young Elorians comforted children who were afraid of leaving their homes forever. Engineers risked their own safety to repair ships during dangerous tremors. Artists and musicians created songs and murals that celebrated the beauty of their planet, reminding everyone why they were fighting so hard to survive. Finally, the night came when the first ships were ready. The skies above Eloria were dark, filled with stars, but the three suns had vanished behind a storm that swallowed the horizon. Families held hands, friends embraced, and the council elders offered blessings for safe travels. Lyra stood at the edge of the launch platform, looking up at the fleet of ships, feeling a mixture of fear, sadness, and hope. Kale joined her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We may be leaving our home," he said softly, "but we are not leaving each other. We carry Eloria in our hearts. That will never leave us." They were leaving behind the world that had nurtured them, but they were not defeated. They would find a way to survive, to live, to carry their culture and knowledge into the stars. As the first ships lifted off, the ground trembled one last time, a reminder of the planet they were leaving behind. Lyra and Kale watched as the fleet disappeared into the darkness of space, their hearts heavy but their spirits unbroken. The universe might have abandoned them, but they were alive, and alive was enough. And so began their journey into the unknown, a journey fueled by hope, courage, and the unyielding determination to survive. The universe might have turned its back, but the Elorians were determined to keep moving forward together, no matter what awaited them beyond the stars. The Elorians were no longer on their home planet, but being in space did not bring immediate relief. Their ships glided through the darkness, weaving past stars and asteroids, carrying thousands of refugees. Despite the beauty of the cosmos outside the viewports, the mood inside the fleet was tense. Fear and uncertainty hung in the air like a thick fog. Lyra moved from ship to ship, checking systems, speaking to families, and offering reassurance wherever she could. The children were quiet, clinging to their parents, unsure of what the future held. The elders shared stories of Eloria, trying to keep memories alive, while the adults quietly argued over how to ration supplies and organize their journey. Kale was in the command room, guiding the fleet, making sure every ship stayed on course and avoided the dangers of space. The journey was not easy. The engines groaned under the strain, the shields flickered against unexpected solar flares, and navigation through dense asteroid fields required perfect timing. Every small error could cost lives. The Elorians had been explorers, but they had never attempted anything like this before. Even Kale, with all his experience, found himself awake through long nights, calculating trajectories, recalculating routes, and praying that the fleet would hold together. Tensions began to rise among the refugees. People were frightened, and fear often brings disagreement. Some believed that traveling further was useless, that they should turn back, even though turning back meant certain death on a collapsing planet. Others argued that they should split into smaller groups, hoping that at least some of them would survive if disaster struck. Arguments broke out, voices raised in frustration, and for a moment it felt as though the fleet itself might fracture. Lyra stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "We are stronger together. Dividing ourselves will only make us weaker. We will face danger, yes, but we face it as one people. Our survival depends on trust, on patience, and on working together. If we fight among ourselves, the universe will win before we even leave it." Slowly, the tension eased, replaced by determination. Every day was a test of patience, endurance, and courage. Engineers worked tirelessly to keep the ships running, often improvising repairs when parts failed. Food and water were limited, and the rationing of supplies became an exact science, monitored by Lyra and her team. Even as they struggled, moments of beauty and wonder reminded them why survival was worth fighting for. Children pressed their faces against the windows to watch planets drift past, stars forming constellations they had never seen before. Some of the adults whispered to each other in awe at the sight of distant nebulae, their colors bright against the black canvas of space. In these quiet moments, hope grew, fragile but persistent, like a tiny flame refusing to be extinguished. The longer they traveled, the more they realized how alone they were. Messages to other civilizations were met with silence. The universe seemed vast, uncaring, and indifferent. The thought of being completely alone was terrifying, yet it also strengthened their resolve. They had survived this long because they refused to give up, and giving up was no longer an option. Kale spent hours at the helm, guiding the fleet through regions where gravitational forces pulled unpredictably, threatening to break formations. He spoke to Lyra often, sharing updates and asking her opinion on difficult decisions. Their partnership became a cornerstone for the people. They trusted her judgment, and they respected his courage. Together, they kept morale as high as possible, knowing that despair could spread faster than any cosmic storm. During one particularly long stretch of darkness, the fleet encountered a massive asteroid belt. The rocks shifted unpredictably, colliding and breaking apart in ways that were impossible to predict. Panic rippled through some of the ships. Children cried, and parents tried to calm them while simultaneously working to adjust shields and engines. Lyra coordinated with Kale, giving instructions and reassurance. "Everyone stay focused," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "Adjust shields by 10%, engines at 30. Do not panic. We have trained for this. We will get through it together." When the last asteroid passed and the fleet was safe again, the relief was overwhelming. People hugged each other, tears of fear and gratitude mixing on their faces. That night, the fleet slept with a renewed sense of determination, knowing that survival was possible even against impossible odds. Yet not all challenges were external. Inside the fleet, isolation began to weigh heavily on the refugees. Days and nights blurred together in the darkness of space. Many suffered from homesickness, missing Eloria's forests, rivers, and skies. Some struggled with guilt, believing that leaving the planet meant abandoning their heritage. Others felt anger at the universe for abandoning them, and that anger sometimes turned into frustration directed at their fellow Elorians. Lyra tried to address these struggles through community gatherings. She encouraged storytelling, music, and art, giving people a way to express grief and hope. Kale organized exercises and simulations, reminding the young and the old alike that every skill they practiced increased their chances of survival. Slowly, the fleet became more than just a group of ships. It became a community, bound together by shared challenges and shared determination. As weeks passed, the fleet faced another obstacle, running out of fuel and food at the projected rate. They needed to make a decision, either find a nearby star system to refuel and gather supplies or risk continuing into deeper, uncharted space. The Council of Elders held a meeting, and for the first time, disagreement nearly turned into division. Some wanted to approach a nearby planet, hoping for help from its inhabitants. Others feared that contact with another civilization might bring hostility instead of aid. Lyra spoke with quiet authority. "We have survived this far because we have trusted each other and worked together. We cannot let fear decide our future. If there is a chance to refuel, to rest, and to heal, we must take it. But we must also be cautious and wise. Every decision we make affects the lives of thousands. Every landing required precise calculation, every action weighed carefully against potential risk." When they finally reached the planet, they were greeted not by hostility, but by silence. It was an uninhabited world, rich in natural resources, rivers of fresh water, fields of edible plants, and minerals that could be used to repair ships. The Elorians worked together to gather what they needed, repairing damaged engines and replenishing supplies. For a brief time, the fleet rested, and people shared smiles again. Children played along the riverbanks, adults laughed over shared meals, and even the elders allowed themselves moments of quiet relief. Yet even in this moment of temporary safety, the Elorians knew that the universe beyond remained vast and indifferent. They had survived asteroid belts, storms, and internal fear, but they still had no guarantee of reaching a permanent home. The knowledge that they were alone in the cosmos was a constant weight on their hearts. Lyra often spent time staring at the stars above, thinking of the worlds they had passed and the civilizations that had ignored their calls for help. "We are alone," she would say quietly to Kale, "but we are not defeated. If the universe will not help us, we will help ourselves. We will find a place where we belong. We have come this far. Every challenge, every danger has only made us stronger. Together we will keep moving forward. We have no choice but to survive, and survive we shall." The Elorians were learning to live as travelers in space, dependent on each other, and discovering strengths they had never known they possessed. They were no longer on their home planet, but they were alive. That alone was enough to keep them moving forward. Each star they passed, each system they navigated was a step toward survival, toward hope, toward a future they would shape with their own hands. The journey through space was long and difficult, but the Elorians were not alone within their own hearts. They carried Eloria with them in their memories, their culture, and their determination to survive. And as they traveled further into the unknown, they began to understand something important. The universe may have abandoned them, but they still had each other. And sometimes, that was more powerful than the entire cosmos. The Elorian fleet had been traveling through the endless black of space for months. Every day brought new challenges, but nothing had prepared them for the moment when they finally approached a blue and green planet that seemed to shimmer with life. From afar, it looked peaceful and inviting, unlike the harsh, desolate worlds they had encountered before. Yet the Elorians approached cautiously. Their previous experiences had taught them that appearances could be deceiving. Lyra stood on the bridge of the lead ship, her eyes fixed on the planet below. The viewports displayed oceans that sparkled under a single sun, vast forests stretching like green carpets, and cities that glimmered faintly in the distance. The humans, she realized, had built their world differently from Eloria. There were no floating cities, no silver rivers, but it was alive, vibrant, and clearly home to intelligent beings. Kale approached her, his expression serious. Sensors show life signs concentrated in several regions. There is intelligent activity. Communication signals are detectable, but they are inconsistent. We have never tried contacting a civilization like this before. At first, there was no response. The silence was heavy, almost as if the planet itself was considering whether it should answer. The Elorians' messages carried basic information. They were travelers in need, refugees seeking a place to rest, repair, and live. Weeks of previous attempts to contact other civilizations had ended in silence, so the quiet now was almost unbearable. Finally, a response came, not through direct communication but through detection of their signals. Earthlings, humans, were observing them. The humans did not immediately respond with messages. Instead, their satellites and telescopes tracked the fleet carefully. Lyra and Kale could see the curiosity, caution, and fear in the readings. Within hours, human spacecraft approached the Elorian fleet. Unlike the Elorians' ships, which were sleek, silver, and smooth, the human vessels were angular with visible panels and engines. Yet there was something reassuring in their presence. They moved carefully, keeping a respectful distance, giving no sign of hostility. The human representatives initiated contact. A voice came through the communication system, calm and clear, in a language the Elorians had never heard before. Using translation protocols, Lyra and her team worked to convert it into something comprehensible. The voice said, "We see you. We are observing. We wish to understand." This was the first time any civilization had acknowledged their existence without turning them away. She responded, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke through the translator. "We are Elorians. Our world is destroyed. We seek refuge. We mean no harm. Please help us." But the response that followed was unexpected. "We understand. Land where it is safe. We will meet you. We will help." Children clung to parents, unsure whether to believe what they were hearing. Kale exhaled, rubbing his eyes, and allowed himself a rare smile. The fleet followed careful instructions from the human representatives, landing in a vast open area that humans called a plain. The land was flat and clear, with grass soft underfoot and small, shallow streams of fresh water nearby. The humans were waiting, not with weapons drawn, but with signs of caution and readiness to assist. Lyra and Kale led the first group down the ramps of the ships, their hearts pounding with a mixture of hope, fear, and exhaustion. The humans were as curious about the Elorians as the Elorians were about them. They wore strange suits and carried devices that could scan, analyze, and communicate. They spoke in a language that had rhythm and emotion, yet somehow through the translators it was understandable. One human stepped forward, extending a hand in a gesture that seemed simple but carried immense meaning. "Welcome," the translator conveyed. "We are humans. We will help you." She had never seen humans before, only through the sensors and images they had picked up. Yet in that gesture, in that simple word, she felt something she had not felt in months: trust. She nodded, her voice clear. "Thank you. We are in need of shelter, food, and guidance. We will cooperate fully." They guided the Elorians to temporary shelters that were built quickly to house the refugees. Engineers and volunteers worked side by side with the Elorians to repair ships, organize food supplies, and provide medical care. Lyra moved among the shelters, observing the humans' kindness and efficiency. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. They were not perfect, but they were willing to help. However, not everything was simple. Communication barriers, cultural differences, and differing expectations caused occasional misunderstandings. Humans were fascinated by the Elorian technology, and some wanted to examine it closely. Elorians were cautious, protective of their knowledge, and sometimes resisted human curiosity. Arguments broke out over priorities. Should they focus on repair, sustenance, or understanding each other? Lyra and Kale mediated whenever tensions arose, emphasizing cooperation. "We are not enemies," Lyra would remind them. "We are survivors together. If we fight each other, we will both lose. Let us work as one." They learned to navigate human technology, from communication devices to food preparation systems. Children quickly became adept at learning human games and languages, blending the old world with the new. Lyra held classes to teach basic Elorian history, science, and culture to human volunteers who were eager to learn. Knowledge flowed both ways, enriching both civilizations. Still, fear lingered. Some Elorians worried that humans would eventually turn on them, or that they were being watched for exploitation. Others struggled to let go of grief for Eloria, the home they had lost forever. Lyra encouraged everyone to remember that survival was the priority, and that building trust with humans was essential for their continued safety. Kale, meanwhile, worked with human engineers to repair the remaining ships, teaching them how to maintain the Elorian systems while learning human engineering techniques. The collaboration was slow at first, but gradually mutual respect developed. The humans were amazed by the efficiency and ingenuity of Elorian technology, while the Elorians were impressed by human creativity, adaptability, and problem-solving skills. During one particularly moving moment, a group of human children brought drawings to the Elorian children. They had drawn pictures of the stars, their homes, and their new friends. The Elorian children responded with artwork of their own, sharing memories of rivers that glowed in the night, forests that shimmered, and cities that floated above the land. These simple acts of creativity bridged the gap between worlds, creating bonds that words alone could not. Despite the positive developments, there were challenges. Some humans were skeptical, afraid of the Elorians' presence. Politicians debated the consequences of hosting an alien civilization, and rumors spread among populations that feared the unknown. Lyra and Kale worked tirelessly to reassure both Elorians and humans, emphasizing the shared goal of survival and mutual benefit. One evening, Lyra stood outside, watching the sunset with Kale. The sky, painted in warm oranges and pinks, reflected in the eyes of humans and Elorians alike. "We have come so far," Kale said softly. "And yet this is only the beginning. We have found safety, yes, but we must learn to live here to be part of this world without losing ourselves." "The universe may have abandoned us," she said, "but humans did not. They chose compassion. They chose to see us as beings, not as threats. That is something we must honor and protect." They discovered that humans were capable of great kindness, courage, and generosity. While uncertainty remained, hope had returned to their hearts. They had survived the void of space, faced countless dangers, and now, for the first time, found a place where they could belong. As night fell over the plains, stars shining brightly above, the Elorians gathered with their human allies. Children laughed, stories were shared, and the bond between two civilizations began to grow. It was not perfect. There were challenges ahead, cultural differences, and the ever-present reminder of Eloria. But for the first time in many months, they felt safe, understood, and valued. The universe may have turned its back on them, but humans had welcomed them. And sometimes that was more powerful than any cosmic force. Life on Earth for the Elorians was both exciting and challenging. After months of traveling through the endless void of space, they finally had land beneath their feet, fresh air to breathe, and humans willing to help them rebuild their lives. Yet, adapting to a completely new world was not easy. Every day presented new challenges, from learning human customs to finding ways to share space and resources fairly. The humans were kind, generous, and curious. They offered food, shelter, and medical aid. They taught the Elorians how to live on a planet with different gravity, weather, and ecosystems. The children adapted quickly, learning human languages and games, while adults slowly adjusted to the unfamiliar surroundings. Some were fascinated by the culture and technology of humans, while others missed Eloria terribly. Homesickness never truly went away. Lyra and Kale worked tirelessly to help the Elorians adapt. Lyra set up classes to teach human volunteers about Elorian science, culture, and history. She wanted humans to understand who they were and why they had traveled so far to seek refuge. Kale partnered with human engineers to maintain and repair the fleet of ships that had carried them from Eloria. He also helped design shelters and community spaces that could house both Elorians and humans comfortably. Despite all the support, not everything went smoothly. Some humans were afraid of the Elorians, worried about what they might bring or what they might want. Rumors spread among human communities, fueled by fear of the unknown. Some politicians argued that hosting the Elorians could be dangerous, that it might put Earth at risk. Lyra and Kale often had to attend meetings, explain the intentions of their people, and reassure humans that they were peaceful and grateful. Among the Elorians, too, there was tension. Some were impatient with humans, frustrated by the slow pace of cooperation. They wanted to rebuild quickly, to restore some sense of normalcy and security, but humans had their own rules, priorities, and customs. Small misunderstandings sometimes led to arguments, and Lyra had to remind everyone that patience and communication were essential for survival. Children became a bridge between the two worlds. They laughed, played, and learned from each other, breaking down barriers without even realizing it. They showed their parents and elders that cooperation was possible and that trust could be built. Art, music, and storytelling became important tools for connection. Human and Elorian children shared drawings of their homes, songs, and stories, finding common ground in their imagination and creativity. Food and water, once scarce, became a central concern in the early days. Humans taught Elorians about agriculture, irrigation, and sustainable farming. Elorians shared knowledge of their own techniques, showing how to grow crops more efficiently and purify water in ways humans had never imagined. The collaboration was slow at first, as both sides learned from each other, but it gradually became a source of pride. Gardens and small farms began to flourish, providing enough for everyone. Work was shared fairly, though not without challenges. Humans and Elorians took turns maintaining shelters, repairing ships, and organizing supplies. Everyone contributed according to their abilities, and the sense of teamwork helped build trust. Even so, there were occasional disputes over resources or responsibilities. Lyra and Kale worked hard to mediate these disputes, always emphasizing that unity was more important than pride. In the evenings, the communities would gather to share stories and celebrate their progress. They sang songs that combined Elorian and human music, blending rhythms and melodies in a way that was entirely new but beautiful. Elders from both sides shared lessons from their past, reminding everyone of the value of courage, compassion, and patience. Children performed plays, drawing inspiration from both worlds, and laughter echoed across the plains, a sound that had been missing for far too long. Yet, challenges remained. Some humans never fully trusted the Elorians, believing they could be dangerous. Some Elorians were wary of humans, afraid that their kindness could hide ulterior motives. Lyra understood these fears and worked tirelessly to show both sides that cooperation and respect were the only way forward. She held meetings, discussions, and workshops to teach problem-solving, conflict resolution, and communication. Slowly, trust began to grow. Kale focused on preparing for long-term survival. Even though they were safe for now, the memory of Eloria's destruction remained fresh. He and his team trained both humans and Elorians in emergency procedures, safety drills, and survival techniques. They simulated storms, fires, and other emergencies, ensuring that everyone could respond quickly and efficiently. These exercises were challenging, but they also helped people bond, creating a sense of shared responsibility. As months passed, the Elorians began to contribute more actively to human communities. They shared their knowledge of medicine, technology, and environmental sustainability. They taught humans new ways to clean water, generate energy, and build structures that were both strong and elegant. Humans, in return, shared their own innovations, showing the Elorians tools and methods that were new to them. The exchange of knowledge became a cornerstone of life on Earth, benefiting both species. Some humans, however, still resisted integration. They worried about the long-term consequences of hosting another civilization. Fearful rumors circulated, suggesting that Elorians might take over resources or influence politics. Lyra and Kale addressed these concerns openly, emphasizing transparency, cooperation, and shared goals. They encouraged dialogue, community meetings, and public discussions to reduce fear and build understanding. Over time, even the skeptics began to see the benefits of working together. The Elorians also faced personal challenges. Many struggled with the loss of their home, grieving the rivers, forests, and cities they had left behind. Lyra encouraged them to express their emotions through art, storytelling, and reflection. Communities held ceremonies to honor Eloria, remembering what had been lost while also celebrating their survival and the chance to build a new life. These moments of remembrance helped heal emotional wounds and strengthen the bonds between individuals and groups. As the years passed, Elorians and humans began to form a true community. They built shared spaces for education, healthcare, and recreation. Gardens, workshops, and public areas became places where both cultures could interact, learn, and grow together. The children, who had grown up in this blended environment, became symbols of hope and unity. They did not see the differences as barriers. They saw them as opportunities to create something greater than either civilization had achieved alone. Lyra often reflected on how far they had come. From a planet abandoned by the universe to a community embraced by humans, the journey had been difficult, frightening, and uncertain. Yet the challenges had forged resilience, cooperation, and hope. She knew that the path ahead would still be filled with obstacles, but for the first time in many years, she felt confident that survival was not just possible, it was meaningful. Kale, standing beside her, watched as humans and Elorians worked together to repair a damaged shelter. He saw laughter, determination, and cooperation in their faces. "This," he said softly, "is the future. We are no longer just survivors. We are builders, creators, and partners. Together we can face anything." The universe had turned its back on them, but humans had not. That simple act of welcome had transformed everything. The communities worked side by side, learning from one another and creating solutions that benefited everyone. They celebrated victories, big and small, from repaired ships to successful harvests to breakthroughs in science and medicine. Each success reinforced the belief that humans and Elorians could thrive together, not in isolation but in unity. Yet Lyra and Kale knew that vigilance was necessary. The world was vast, and there were still unknown challenges ahead. Environmental changes, political disagreements, and cultural misunderstandings could still threaten the fragile peace they had built. They reminded their communities to remain patient, compassionate, and proactive, ensuring that cooperation remained stronger than fear. Despite all the difficulties, hope had returned. The Elorians were no longer just refugees. They were part of a new civilization, a blended community that represented the best of both worlds. Children laughed freely, elders shared wisdom openly, and adults worked tirelessly to ensure a brighter future. The lessons of survival, patience, and trust were deeply embedded in every heart. As the sun set over the shared settlements, painting the sky with colors neither Elorians nor humans had ever seen on their own, Lyra reflected on the journey. "We have been tested by the universe," she said quietly to Kale. "We have faced fear, loss, and uncertainty, but we have also discovered kindness, courage, and cooperation. That is the true measure of survival. We have been given a second chance, and we will not waste it." The universe had turned its back on them, yet humanity had welcomed them with open hearts. And in that welcome, the Elorians had found not just safety, but hope, purpose, and the promise of a new beginning. Years had passed since the Elorians first arrived on Earth. What had started as a desperate flight from a dying world had grown into something extraordinary. The Elorians were no longer just visitors or refugees. They had become part of a new, shared civilization alongside humans. The settlements had expanded, blending the best of both cultures, combining Elorian technology with human creativity, and creating communities that were stronger, smarter, and more compassionate than either species could have been alone. Lyra walked through one of the bustling settlements, observing the life around her. Children ran through gardens that combined earth plants with Elorian innovations, learning about nature and science in ways that were entirely new. Humans and Elorians worked side by side in workshops, building machines, improving energy systems, and studying the stars. Markets and community centers hummed with activity, with voices speaking multiple languages, yet everyone understood one another through patience, empathy, and cooperation. Even the skies above were different. Earth's atmosphere had once been untouched by Elorian technology, but now silent, efficient transport ships carried supplies and people between settlements. The sight reminded everyone that the fleet that had once traveled through empty space was now part of daily life, not as a reminder of loss, but as a symbol of progress and hope. Lyra met with Kale at the Central Council Hall, a space built to allow humans and Aelorians to govern and plan together. Kale was reviewing star maps, preparing to send exploratory missions to nearby systems that could provide new resources. "We've come far," Lyra said quietly. "It's almost hard to believe where we started, floating through space, uncertain if anyone would help us. We've turned survival into progress, despair into hope. Humans welcomed us when the universe abandoned us, and we've learned to welcome them back in return." Aelorians offered insights into sustainable energy, advanced medicine, and environmental preservation techniques. Every discussion was framed by respect, curiosity, and a shared goal of mutual prosperity. Arguments still occurred, but they were constructive, driven by problem-solving rather than fear or distrust. As part of the Council's initiatives, Lyra helped establish the Memory and Knowledge Archive, a place where humans and Aelorians could record their histories, cultures, and scientific discoveries. The archive became a hub for learning, curiosity, and reflection. Aelorians shared memories of Aeloria, including songs, stories, and images of their glowing rivers and floating cities. Humans contributed their history, inventions, and experiences. Together, they created a repository of knowledge meant to preserve the past while inspiring the future. Despite all the progress, challenges continued. There were still humans who distrusted the Aelorians, fearing that alien technology could upset the balance of life on Earth. Similarly, some Aelorians worried that humans might misuse their knowledge or take advantage of them. Lyra and Kale remained vigilant, organizing dialogue sessions, workshops, and shared projects to ease fears and reinforce trust. Slowly but surely, these efforts helped even the skeptics see the benefits of collaboration. The children, now growing into young adults, were perhaps the most remarkable sign of progress. They embodied the blend of cultures, curious, inventive, and resilient. They played games that mixed Earth rules with Aelorian strategies, painted murals that reflected the beauty of both worlds, and even experimented with small inventions combining technologies. Their creativity reminded the older generations of why survival and integration were worth every struggle. Medicine also saw remarkable growth. Aelorian knowledge of biology and healing combined with human ingenuity to create treatments that neither species could have developed alone. Illnesses that once posed threats were now manageable, and new techniques in nutrition and mental health strengthened the community. Hospitals and clinics became places of learning as well as care, with humans and Aelorians exchanging ideas freely, improving life for everyone. The environment itself began to recover and thrive under this new cooperative effort. Human engineering had been powerful, but Aelorian technology allowed more sustainable practices, improving agriculture, water management, and energy use. Forests that had been cleared for temporary settlements were replanted and enhanced with techniques that increased growth and biodiversity. Rivers were cleaned, and new green spaces flourished in the shared communities. Life on Earth was richer than it had ever been before. Festivals and celebrations became central to daily life. Twice a year, humans and Aelorians gathered to celebrate survival, friendship, and the unity of two civilizations. Songs blended languages, dances combined styles, and feasts featured dishes that mixed both culinary traditions. Elders told stories of the past, of Aeloria, of the first days on Earth, and of the challenges they had overcome. These events were joyful, but they also reminded everyone of the journey that had brought them together. One evening, during a festival, Lyra stood before the gathered crowd, human and Aelorian alike. The sky glowed with lights, lanterns floating upward alongside drones that carried gentle illumination. Children laughed and played, while adults shared stories and music. Lyra took a deep breath and spoke clearly, her words translated into multiple languages. "We have come a long way," she said. "We have faced loss, fear, and uncertainty. Our home was taken from us and the universe offered no help. But we did not give up. Humans welcomed us when we had nowhere else to go. Together, we have learned, grown, and built a new home, a home of hope, cooperation, and understanding. Let this be a reminder that kindness and trust are stronger than fear, and that together, we can overcome anything." He whispered, "This is what it means to survive. Not just to live, but to thrive, to learn, and to create something better than we imagined." The knowledge gained not only ensured survival, but also inspired innovation and curiosity. Each discovery reminded them of the vast possibilities that awaited when trust, courage, and collaboration guided their actions. Lyra often reflected on the contrast between their past and present. Once, the universe had seemed indifferent, uncaring, and hostile. Now life was vibrant, cooperative, and full of possibility. They had learned that even in the darkest moments, hope could survive, and that true strength lay not just in survival, but in connection, empathy, and shared purpose. Kale, meanwhile, continued to lead missions and organize training programs for both humans and Elorians. He emphasized adaptability, resilience, and learning from mistakes. The fleet of ships that had once carried them from the dying world now served as tools of exploration, education, and innovation, a symbol of their journey and the possibilities that lay ahead. The communities continued to grow, expanding to new areas and building more sustainable settlements. Humans and Elorians worked together to create schools, research centers, and green spaces. They shared knowledge, technology, and culture freely, learning from each other's successes and failures. Through collaboration, they had built a society that was stronger, smarter, and more compassionate than either could have achieved alone. One quiet night, Lyra and Kale walked to the top of a hill overlooking the main settlement. The stars above were bright, the same stars that had guided them across space, but now they shone over a home they had built together. Children played below, humans and Elorians mingling freely. The wind carried laughter, music, and the faint hum of technology blending naturally with the sounds of nature. "We made it," Lyra said softly. "We survived when the universe abandoned us. We built something that matters. We are home. We are a new civilization together." Together, they were not just living, they were thriving. And so, under the stars, the two civilizations looked toward the future with determination and hope. The universe might have been indifferent, but humans had chosen kindness. That choice had changed everything. The Elorians had been welcomed, embraced, and given the chance to rebuild. And in that act of welcome, the story of survival had transformed into a story of growth, unity, and the extraordinary power of working together.